Hi, I'm Dawn and this is where Shabby meets bling. I have 2 thrifted items that have inspired my project for today, and one of those items is actually going to assist me in creating it.
This is Rustic Wednesday, but on Saturday, the Getting Down on the Farm edition. Joining me, as always, on Rustic Wednesday is my co-host, Shelly, from Repurposed My Way. You're going to find the link to her channel as well as the link to this fabulous playlist in my description box below. This decorative plaque was a roadside find, and it is not in the best condition, and let's face it, it's not even pretty, but it has potential. So I have been hanging on to it, thinking at some point I'm going to make a sign with it. I have recently thrifted a couple of items that are going to help me in this endeavor of making a sign. At my favorite resale shop, I picked up this Griswold metal corn muffin mold for $1. Yes, $1. Now here comes the winner corn feed dinner. I picked up this Vintage Miracle Maize cornbread special edition dish made by Indiana Glass. This thing was commissioned by Little Crow Foods, the makers of a Miracle Maize cornbread mix, in 1939. So this thing is roughly 85 years old, so pretty happy with my little find. This is what you could expect to pay for some of these pans, and they are not all the same, especially those metal ones. They are slightly different. Keep in mind, I paid $1 for the metal one, and I paid $3.49 at Goodwill for my glass Miracle Maize pan. So my thoughts are this: let's bake some muffins. We're not gonna bake. We are gonna use my flour clay, and that is FLOWER, not FLOUER. Flour clay, like out in your garden. I am using my flour clay, and I am going to make some of these little muffins, these little corn shapes. That's what we're after. I roll out my clay so that I've got a nice strip to use. Then I am going to lightly dust with cornstarch my glass pan. Very, very lightly. I don't want to take up the indentations with the cornstarch because I need that clay to fit down in there. And then I start to press my clay down into my mold. I press gently and then move the clay up as each of the little muffin cavities is filled, and I make sure to press all of the areas so every bit of the corn cob impression shows up on my clay. Now, you want to be careful not to press too tightly around the edge of the mold because it can stick. I separate each molded clay area with my fingernail. I left my little knife in the other room, and I thought, hey, my hands are gross. We're just gonna use the fingernail, and it worked just fine. I continue until all of the little molded areas are filled, and then we are going to let them dry just a little bit. This flour clay did get purchased at Hobby Lobby. As my corn was drying, I added more cornstarch in the cavity itself, that corn cob cavity, and I even worked some down around the sides. I gently pried apart the clay from the glass mold, and with my brush, I added more cornstarch because I don't want these little guys to stick. Super importante. Just as important as them not sticking, it's the drying time. I need these things to dry a little quicker than normal, and that cornstarch is going to absorb a lot of the moisture. It's just going to drink it on up. I used the same method when I was removing these little corn cobs. Now, I am ready to be sadly disappointed or totally amazed. Oh, wow. Look at that. It is amazing. I'm really surprised that I didn't get much sticking on these things. It just kind of rolled right out. Very nice. This probably dried. I probably left it in the mold maybe 2 hours, probably not much more than that. Here's a look at my first 4. I am pretty darn happy with the outcome of these. I am going to make quite a few more, probably 8 more, just to have enough. I don't know exactly the design that I want to create yet, but I know I'm gonna need some corn. Well, it looks like I picked the whole field. There is no more corn out there to be had. Oh, shoot. I think I made 13 total, a baker's dozen. I am now just drawing around the perimeter of my little corn cobs because I need to know where to cut them, and I want to make sure I'm relatively straight. So I mark out each and every one of them, and then I am going to take my handy-dandy shears and give them a trim. I am also at this time dusting off as much of the cornstarch as possible because there's one more thing we need to do to these before we'll paint them, and that step comes next. My corn has been shaved, and it is cornstarch free. Cornstarch. No more corn starch on my corn. I am re-enlisting the aid of that glass pan of mine, and I have lined it with some wax paper, and I am pushing the little corn cobs back into their molds. The reason for the wax paper is I am going to protect my glass mold from what we're doing next. I don't want to get what I'm going to use on this thing because I don't want to ruin it. So once I get everybody pushed into a mold, then I bust out my spray foam. This is an insulation foam. It's high density and you can use hot glue with it, so it's pretty special stuff. I love using this. I have used it in other projects like this project and this project. I'll leave the links to these videos in the description box. So I fill each of my little cavities with my foam. You don't need a lot because this stuff expands. That's the whole point of it. It's used to fill cracks anywhere you are trying to fill a crack. I like to use it to make things. So give it a whirl if you dare. It is incredibly sticky, so do not get it on yourself. Follow the directions and have fun. The reason I'm using it now is because I need a flat surface to glue these onto my sign when the time comes. My foam is dry, and now I very, very carefully trim the extra foam off of the back of each of my little corn cobs. Once I have all of them trimmed up, we're gonna paint. We're gonna paint these little puppies. I am going to use a chalk paint on my corn, and I am going to use for the yellow, that luscious yellow. My favorite yellow, I think I have quite a few yellow paints in my stasharoonie, but I am going to use this Hello Hobby yellow. It is a Tuscan Sun. I recently used it on my tulips in this video. I'll leave that link for you so you can check that out. But I paint all of my little corn, just the corn, this yellow. If I get over onto the husk a little bit, no big deal because we're going to be coming back with some green. So I make sure I get all of the corn into the little grooves and everything, and then we set them aside and let them dry. Now to take care of the husk. This is another Hello Hobby, a chalk paint. It is sage, and I think this color is simply gorgeous. Gorgeous. I get all the green on here. If I have to come back after this and do some detail painting with that Tuscan Sun and the sage, I will. While I was playing with my clay, I made some extra corn husk, and I'm going to paint them that same sage green. I created a stamp for my clay. I will be doing a video on some of the stamps and cutters I've created just out of everyday objects for clay. I'll be doing a video soon, but you can see there's like a strié pattern in these corn husks just to look like a real corn husk. I wanted them to also resemble the leaves, the corn husk on my actual corn from my corn muffin pan. Once I used my stamp, I just free-handed out some little corn husk so I could use them in addition to my corn. Well, all corn needs to be in a bushel basket. So I am going to make a bushel basket. I am going to use part of this paper mache box. I am going to cut it down to about not quite half. And then I am going to decorate it with cardboard, only cardboard, to make it look dimensional like a real bushel basket would look. By using my box cutter and my coping saw, I was able to cut this little box apart. Now to add dimension. The top needs to be bigger than the middle, and the top needs to be bigger than the bottom, but the bottom needs to be bigger than the middle, if that makes sense. So I'm creating little strips of cardboard that I'm going to glue one on top of the other on top of the other to build up dimension on the top and the bottom. I draw, then cut out about a dozen strips in total. Then I decide that they're a little too big for what I'm after, so I cut those in half. Here you can see the difference in the sizes, and the small is going to work so much better. I cut out 3 little tabs that I'm going to glue on the inside of the paper mache box. I just use 3-in-1 glue, and I hold them in place, one in the middle and then one on either side. This is going to give me a backing for my strips as I glue them at the top. Then I begin gluing the strips to the top, and I will glue one after the other, and I will clamp it into place so it sets up evenly. This is how it looks after multiple layers of those strips glued into place. And you can see how the top is more extended than the bottom, and the bottom is more extended than the middle. It's kind of like an hourglass shape. Now I'm just using some scrappy cardboard to glue onto the back. This is going to give me a flat surface to glue my basket onto my sign. And just those little edges won't do the trick. It won't stay in place, and it won't hold my corn. The corn is relatively heavy after all of the foam that has been inserted into its cavities. No one is going to see any of this, not the paper mache box, not the strips that I glued on, and not this cardboard, these 2 pieces of cardboard I'm gluing onto the back, because after I'm done here, I'm going to paint this, and I'm going to be adhering more cardboard, different shapes, onto the front. I have glued 3 pieces of my wired rope ribbon onto my gonna be bushel basket, already in place, one below the top, one above the bottom, and one on the very bottom edge. This is going to create a shape for me. You know how bushel baskets are shaped. Well, these are the other shapes that I've cut out. I just was playing around to see the way a bushel basket looked in my mind, and this is what I came up with. I am going to paint all these pieces, and then I'm going to glue them into place like so. Just like that. I will be using not only my hand, but my paintbrush and whatever I have handy to gently curve this cardboard, because bushel baskets are curvy. Now for some paint. This is a Waverly chalk paint. It is cashew, and it is a lovely color, I must say. I am painting the entire little gonna be bushel basket, and all of the other little cardboard pieces I will be using to adhere on the exterior of this little bushel basket. The strips will get painted on both sides, just to make sure nobody wants to see cardboard advertising on their beautiful sign, unless it's what they're advertising, which is Miracle Maize. Here's all my painted components, and I gotta say, it doesn't look like much of anything right now. Not at all, but it will. I hope it will. Well, I have drawn a little bit of a line at the top, so I know how much to hang each of my little pieces off, and now it's just organizing these pieces with the straight pieces behind those little flared pieces, and I will glue them all the way down. I will glue them at the top, I will glue them in the middle, and I will glue them around and down and onto the bottom of this little paper mache box. I work from the center out, layering the pieces. I get 2 of the straight strips down, and then I'll put that curvy piece on top of them, centered. I continue to work my way from the center towards both edges. I will glue a straight strip and then come back and center a curvy strip on top of it, all the way until I get to either side. You can see the basket starting to form. Once I have all the pieces in place, I will glue that top edge to those strips that you won't see that I added earlier, so the top lays flat. Bushel baskets have one more thing. They have a metal strip or two, depending on what the bushel baskets are like. What I've done here is cut 2 incredibly thin pieces of cardboard, and I've marked out evenly spaced dots. I am going to create those little nail heads in that metal, air quotes, metal strip with a little stick pin. I place a stick pin in each and every one of those little holes. I will glue it in place, and then I will cut it off flush with the back so it lays flat when I glue it onto my bushel basket. The head of the pin is glued in place with 3-in-1 glue. The back of the pin where I have cut it off is glued into place with hot glue. I continue until each of the designated spots have little nail heads in place. When complete, I will paint both of these strips in a Waverly chalk paint in the color Silver Lining. This is a Rustic Wednesday, so my corn, my little basket, everything needs to be aged. Before starting the aging process, I gave all of my little corn cobs a coat of Mod Podge, matte Mod Podge. I am using another Waverly chalk paint. This is Truffle. It is a beautiful brown, and I am doing a wash. It's kind of a dry brush, and then I come back with a little bit of water, and then I wipe it back so it gets in all the cracks and crevices. We just need all the components of this sign to look old, to look aged. Once the aging process has dried, I will bust out my podge one more time, and I will seal all of my hard work with the podge. Mod Podge. Here's a little before and after so you can see the extreme difference. Now, to make my bushel basket look more like a bushel basket, to make it look wood, to make it look old, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I did add another cardboard strip onto the very tip top of my bushel basket there, because that is where my metal band, one of them anyway, will be glued. And after I finished painting this cashew, it also got a coat of matte Mod Podge. Right now, I am using that same truffle paint and some water, and I'm going to create little wood knots and wood streaks like it was the grain of a wood basket. And this was time consuming, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit so you get the idea. This is more of an abstract wood grain. To see a more fine wood grain, you can check out this project. I'll leave the link to this video in my description box. I cover the entire basket, making little swirls of different sizes and shapes, and lines that are straight, lines that are a little bit curvy, anything that is going to mimic a wood grain. I make it darker as I go, light behind, darker in front. It's all about layers. When I get it exactly the way I want it, I come back with a very fine paintbrush and do some tiny little detail work, just using that same truffle brown chalk paint. Once it's dry, I will also seal this in with a matte Mod Podge. Back to that roadside find, I wiped it down really good, and I decided instead of peeling all of this off, which who's to say how it would come off or not, my decision was to Mod Podge it down and to give it a coat of Mod Podge. Once it's dry, I coat the entire thing, top and sides, in a flat black paint. You can use any kind of paint you want on this. Does not matter. I am using an interior house paint, Color Place from Walmart. We need some verbiage on our sign, so why not make it say Miracle Maize, right? So I drew out the miracle part of it, and I'm cutting this out to create a stencil. I have traced my stencil directly onto my sign. My sign had 2 coats of black paint, but in between one section of it, I painted it in a snow white chalk paint and then sanded it back after I added my second coat of black paint. And now I am painting around my stencil to leave the miracle part in that distressed white paint. And I'm sorry my big old melon's in the way. I was just going to town painting this thing, and I really thought I had it in a better camera shot for you, so I sincerely apologize for that big old melon right there. But you can get the idea. I am just painting around the entire stencil in the exact same black house paint that I used for the sign initially. You can also see that I have painted the edge of my sign. I painted the routed part snow white, which is a Waverly chalk paint, and then the flat edge of the perimeter of my sign I painted in flamenco red. So pretty. So we have the miracle part covered, and now we're going to take care of the maze, and this is the last component before we are done. These are woodpile letters, and I picked them up at the Hobby Lobby. They are getting painted that very same flamenco red that I used on the perimeter of the sign. Once my paint is dry, I will coat them in matte Mod Podge. Once that is dry, I will age them the same way I aged my corn and my basket. And then once that is dry, I will give them a sealer coat of the Podge, matte Mod Podge. All of the components of my sign will be glued to my sign with a combination of 3-in-1 glue and hot glue.
All I need to do is assemble all of my little components, and then I'm going to share this project with all of you.
With a tacky roadside find and the assistance of a vintage glass cornbread pan, we get this. Miracle Maize, fresh from the farm. I love the aspects of this sign. The fact that that roadside find was kind of gritty and disturbing underneath, and I just let that shine. I let this little thing's freak flag fly high at full mast, and I just coated it with black paint. You can see the distressing on the word miracle and the aging on the maze. There's one of the ears of corn. This I added extra husk to make it even more lifelike. And there is my basket with the little metal trim, chuck full of corn, chuck full of maize, miracle maize, yeah. Here's a very good look at my bushel basket. You can see the wood grain on that basket and the little metal strips that I added. It is amazing what a little paper mache and a lot of cardboard can do. You'd never know, and if you tapped on this thing, it sounds like wood. Here's a good look at how deep the dimension is on that basket and those ears of corn. I did add accent corn husk on all 4 corners, 3 on each corner. And each one has that extra design in it from my clay stamp. And I just remembered I have extra corn cobs. So if I want to make a coordinating piece to go along with this sign, I can. This sign reminds me of my grandparents' farm and running through the cornfields as a kid and hiding in the barn, and it was just an amazing time, and doing this was a whole lot of fun with a whole lot of memories wrapped up in it. Thanks again to my talented friend Shelly for joining me in this Rustic Wednesday down on the farm. You're going to find the link to her channel and this playlist in my description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, share it with your family and friends, and anyone that likes DIYs, repurposing, thrifting, flipping, salvaging, farmhouse, and rustic decor. You can follow me on Instagram, and don't forget to check out my shop on Etsy. Leave me a comment. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Ring the bell for notifications of all my upcoming videos. Subscribe. It's a great way to support my channel. But for now, this is Dawn with Shabby Meets Bling. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.